when you talk about the $200 to something, right? For that 1 year, seems like, oh, that sucks. Like what a failure or whatever. But in reality, it turned into so many other things that looking at that year as a failure is just a waste of time. So, very interesting little reboot here because I've fallen off the wagon here, and we talked about that earlier. We used to do this podcast a lot, and using you a little bit as a jumping point for me to get back into it.
Nice.
Okay. For those people that may not know, you were one of our very first guests when we first started. This was like 2 years ago. It popped up on my Facebook feed a while back, like nice. 2 years ago. So that's really cool. So for people who don't know you and never watched our stuff before, because that's going to be most people, tell us who you are, your backstory, just kind of give us some insight. Go.
Yeah, of course. I'm Ryan McGuire. I'm the owner, president, every title you could possibly have for Armic Systems, a digital agency here in Odessa. I serve clients all across the Permian Basin, and I specialize in digital advertising. That takes a lot of... there's a lot more to that than people think. When you say digital advertising or marketing, the first thing people's minds go to is either Facebook or some other social media platform or their website. And I do a whole lot with Google and targeted advertising and just a variety of things that might not come to mind. I've been in that industry for the last several years. Used to have an app called Grubstar.
In some way, shape, or form. Yeah. Okay, that's what I was about to get to. Yes.
Yeah, exactly. And also just have a huge passion for Odessa. I love the Permian Basin in general, but being born and raised in Odessa and hearing the negative speak that's really popular about Odessa. I think we're one of the most self-deprecating communities that possibly exist. And I want to change that narrative and encourage people to appreciate.
Yeah, for sure. So let's talk a little bit. I want to talk a little bit about your backstory because we were talking about this earlier. This is super interesting to me. When you were originally on our podcast, you were there for you had an app, Grubstar,
right?
And I want to talk about this a little bit. And we mentioned before, you're okay with me mentioning it because I think this is a super important lesson. I think a lot of people could learn from. So talk about Grubstar for a little bit, and then we'll see where that goes, because that's what's interesting to me.
Yeah, so what I was talking about earlier is whenever I left banking to start Grubstar, I had a lot of money set aside in savings it was pretty much my life savings.
Yeah.
And I decided that I was going to dedicate that money to the development and everything that surrounded building this app and getting it out there. So the idea behind Grubstar was exclusive menu items and deals at local restaurants. Wanted to launch it in the Permian Basin and then see where it went from there.
Right.
Had a really awesome app development partner that did all the technical programming and that kind of stuff for the app, and then I handled the marketing side of it. Yeah. And it did not take off the way that I hoped.
Sure.
The entire year,
because the app world is difficult.
Oh, yeah.
It is super difficult, right? Go ahead.
Absolutely. Okay. It's like a lottery kind of thing. I remember that whenever I was looking at the first install data, I was super disappointed because we had like a 36% retention rate after 7 days. And that just killed me. And then I looked at like the national statistics, and a standard like 1 week retention rate was more like 13%. So we were actually crushing it.
Right.
I just wasn't used to seeing retention numbers that slow.
Sure.
Or that low. But anyway, the thing that I mentioned earlier to you is that in the entire year that I was working on that app...
This is what's interesting.
Yeah.
There's a reason for it. Go ahead.
I made $200.
For the whole year?
For the entire year.
Yeah.
That was actually my gross income.
Yeah.
That was not a net.
Sure. It's like intermission music.
Yeah, totally was.
You're good. So there's a reason why this is interesting to me, and it's not because, and I explained to you a little bit off camera, but I want to make sure people understand that I'm not making fun of you. That's not what's going on. Why I find that so interesting is because in some people's minds, that would be looked at as a failure, right? But the reason why that's interesting is because Grubstar, in a lot of ways, is the reason why you're where you're at today.
It is.
So explain the progression of how that happened from Grubstar to where you're at now.
So
you can leave names out, but yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. It was a really interesting thing. As I was working on Grubstar, I began falling more and more in love with digital advertising, as opposed to,
because you were doing it for Grubstar.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yeah, and there were so many.
Our stories are very similar.
That's awesome. Okay. Yeah, I want to hear more.
Yeah.
But there were things that I was seeing. I kind of had decided several months before we ended Grubstar. My daughter was on the way, and that was, that brought with it a lot of responsibility. And I saw that Grubstar wasn't necessarily going to work anymore. So I put my feelers out there, and I really wanted a job in digital, and I wasn't sure what that looked like. So I ended up going and becoming the director of digital sales and marketing for a local TV station.
Yep.
They were a national affiliate, and so I had access to more digital advertising tools than I ever had before. Really an incredible gig. And over the course of about a year and 3 months, year and 4 months, I learned everything that I could about the industry, and we experienced a lot of success. That passion that I felt like I might have whenever I was doing Grubstar was a very real thing. And so to have all of the resources of that station at my disposal was absolutely incredible, and only fueled the flame of my passion for digital. So at the end of 2018, going into 2019, looking at projected numbers for 2019, where I was at, and a lot of other factors, I decided that the best thing for me to do would be to pursue digital advertising on my own.
Yeah.
And that doesn't mean that you do it entirely by yourself, but I had learned very, very, I guess implementable maybe isn't the best word, but some really incredible strategies for search engine optimization, for a variety of your really important things with digital advertising. And I felt like I'd reached a point where I could no longer offer what I knew I was capable of offering under the limitations of my contract with the station that I was working with. And so I took it out on my own. We are 9 months in. It's been absolutely incredible. The clients that I get to work with, I'm no longer limited by platform, because when you're working in this industry, there are so many digital advertising platforms.
Yeah.
Just like there's Facebook and Instagram and Pinterest and Snapchat and all these different social media platforms, there are a ton of ways to accomplish digital advertising. And I had been limited to only what was approved by our company.
Right.
Well, now I can work with anybody that I want to. And it's been so freeing and a positive experience for my clients, because literally there's nothing they can't bring to me that we can't do.
Right.
It just becomes a matter of, okay, who do we need to talk to? How much do we need to spend? And we can make it happen.
Yep.
Yeah.
The freedom there,
and
right?
Exactly. And that brings us to today. Definitely doing better than I was at $200 a year.
Sure, right.
Enough to support my family, but also to deliver something that I think is much more impactful than an app that, it served a purpose and it was a really neat idea, but I feel like I can do so much more for a variety of different organizations doing digital advertising in the scope that I am now.
Do you feel like you were chasing money with the app? And I don't mean that as a dig at all. I'm just curious.
I felt like the idea that I had was huge.
Gotcha.
And so I'm a huge foodie, and so I wanted to do something that was that was kind of in the food industry, but I didn't have any interest in the restaurant industry, and I have no skills in the kitchen.
Gotcha.
And so I thought, okay, I'm interested in this digital side. I'm interested in marketing, and I've got this idea for an app that I think would just blow up. I actually had an acquisition offer in the early stages of Grubstar that I declined because I felt like
it was going to be bigger than...
I did, and I thought that would be the story of, I sold for tens of thousands of dollars when I could have sold for millions just several months down the line.
Right.
In retrospect, I probably should have taken that deal.
Right.
But it was a really awesome thing, and then you look at things like Uber Eats introduced some exclusive menu items at restaurants.
You were on the right track.
Yeah, exactly. I feel like I was on the right track, and I actually think there is still a market for that.
Yeah.
The money was not the driving force behind creating the app, but I definitely felt like it could be a huge potential revenue stream.
Yeah.
But monetizing it properly was the challenge.
Sure. Like most apps have that problem.
Exactly.
No, yeah, most apps have that issue. Like monetizing is difficult.
Right.
But anyway, that it is what it is. What's so interesting to me, and like I said, is that I wish more people would look at it the way you did. Like there's so many like micro failures we have that in the moment seem like life changing, right? Because like Grubstar right now, it takes up a certain portion of your life, right? But as you get older, that's going to mean less and less and less, right? It's going to be such a smaller portion of your life the farther along you get along. However, the impact that it had immediately following that means so much.
It does.
You know what I mean? So it's so interesting to me, like when you talk about the $200 to something, right? For that 1 year, seems like, oh, that sucks. Like what a failure or whatever. But in reality, it turned into so many other things that looking at that year as a failure is just a waste of time. You know what I mean?
It is, yeah. And there are people. I talked with a friend of mine whenever I was leaving the TV station that I was working for, and she literally, her words to me whenever I told her that I was pursuing my own business again were, okay, well, call me when you're going back to work. Like have a good vacation, basically. And I don't feel like that person, and she's still a friend of mine, and people like her, they don't understand that just because something wasn't commercially successful or a success in a traditional sense doesn't mean that it was not a resounding success. Because I look at those Grubstar days, and I think you and I have talked about this in the past, but I want to make sure that we share it here, is that a lot of my connections that I have currently in the business world are relationships that I established whenever I had the time.
While you were hustling for Grubstar.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, because not only was I really trying to build that brand, at the same time, I was also using the time that I wasn't stuck in an office when I'd been in banking to network and to tell people about this vision that I had, that Odessa could be a place that a national, potentially internationally successful app could be launched from. And that's something that harkens back to what I said at the beginning of this recording.
Yeah.
I believe that Odessa can be anything that it wants to be. We just have to have the right mindset.
Yeah.
And so often we lose talent to Austin or to hubs where it might be easier to find opportunities, rather than focusing on creating those opportunities locally.
Yeah.
Because really, the geography doesn't matter nearly as much as it used to.
Oh, no. It's almost we're getting to the point in today's technological era where it's becoming inconsequential.
It is.
I mean, just the Grubstar thing is so interesting because like it could have been something, right? Like, and I don't want you to speculate too much about like, should have kept going or whatever, but like the fact that it had the ability to blow up here is just mind-boggling to me, and it should be mind-boggling to most people. I love what you're talking about with Odessa, because this is, again, the whole premise of what I'm trying to do here is I want to highlight people's stories and stuff here in the basin. We have a mutual Facebook friend who likes to post stuff that we both think is dumb, and I don't want to say too much because we're friends on Facebook, that we disagree with his tactics.
Yeah.
You know what I'm talking about?
Yes.
Okay. So one of the things that he likes to do is he'll post stuff that's like bashing on Odessa because it gets a laugh out of people, right? And which is fine. It's great. But it's so funny to me how quickly people will jump onto those stereotypes because they're like, oh, yeah, that's so true. In reality, it's really not. A lot of those stereotypes are in your head. You know, there are some stuff that, I do agree with. Like, we don't have as many things as other places, but it's not like it's a barren wasteland out here, right? Like there's plenty, like when Synergy moved here, for example, I thought that was such a cool thing. It was just Absolutely. Like, oh my God, finally we get something here. Because I love going to Main Event in Lubbock.
Yeah.
And I was super excited. I was like, oh my God, like finally we're getting something like this to be here and it's been a resounding success, I think. Right?
Oh, it has to have been.
Yeah, I mean, you know, I don't want to get too much into that because, you know, Ray was working there for a while, but they, that to me was not because I wasn't just excited that it was coming. I was excited because I knew it was going to work, and I was like, more people are going to want to build stuff out here for that reason. Stuff like that. And so we are seeing a lot of this, and Colin Sewell is a big reason for this too. What's going on at the Parks Legato area?
Yep.
They're building more space out there, right?
Phase 2 of Parks Legato. It's exciting.
Is it true that they're bringing Torchy's Tacos?
Torchy's is downtown.
They're building it downtown?
Yeah, Torchy's Tacos right outside of the Marriott.
When is that?
Marriott.
When is that going to be here?
I'm honestly not sure. I was literally out there maybe 2 weeks ago and saw they were, I don't know, I think they were prepping it to pour foundation.
Gotcha.
But within the next several months, I would imagine, if not early 2020.
Okay, so what about Payway? I heard Payway, but is that a rumor?
I think that's a rumor. I haven't seen anything on Payway.
I love Payway.
Yeah, I don't know.
So I saw that Payway's coming. I'm like, oh yeah, it's done. Like, I'm going to, wherever that's at, I'm going to move next door. I freaking love Payway.
Maybe it is. I missed that. I know out at Parks Legato, I think they're going to have Pop Bar and...
I saw that one.
Growler
I
USA,
sawant that one too. Yeah. I'm super
which
pumped
is
amazing.
About that. So I'm really excited.
Cool. So on a less serious note, I like your hat. Just want to talk about this for a moment. I'm going to give a shout out real quick. Cowboys won yesterday. We beat the Redskins.
Yeah.
Eagles lost. Giants lost. It was the best weekend ever.
Oh man,
super excited.
I wasn't even thinking about that.
So I've got to do this because I've got a friend of mine. I know a Redskins fan, I know a Giants fan, and I know an Eagles fan. And suck it. As we move on, your networking stuff that you've got going on right now. And one of the reasons why we started talking, you know, rekindling our friendship in the first place was because I am super impressed with your, I'm not even sure if it's a skill necessary, but I'm going to call it that because that's what it feels like, your networking skills. I suck at that. It's the reason why I'm doing this, right? Like, this gives me a reason to have a conversation with you. Not just you. That's not what I mean. I mean, like, other people.
Right.
Like, it gives me a reason to have a conversation with someone outside of buy my stuff. So talk to me about networking. How do you feel you approach that? And I don't know. Just talk about that for a moment because I'm very interested in that. I think a lot of people could probably benefit from this.
So my approach to networking is honestly pretty laissez-faire. I go to things that I want to go to, and it's honestly... it's really, like you mentioned, it's not necessarily a skill. I am a huge people person. I just love being around people. And so as events pop up and I'm invited to things, I attend. And then just by nature of me wanting to learn more about other people and asking them questions about what they do that might go a little bit more below the surface than typical just banter would go, I've just made a lot of really deep relationships.
I'm really glad you went down that route. For a very specific reason. Because when I say the word networking, most people that were listening imagined going to a mixer and handing their business card out.
Yep.
Right? And we've had this conversation before, right?
Yeah.
So I think that's what most people hear whenever the word networking comes out. Not understanding that I think most of us, and this is the reason why I feel so uncomfortable doing it, because I always do feel like there's pressure for me to do X, Y, and Z, and it's not comfortable for me at all. And again, the reason why I like doing this is because it takes that away. It takes that aspect out of the equation because I'm not asking you to buy anything from me. No one that sits in the chair you're sitting in, not that specific chair because that one's yours, but I'm not going to ask that of anybody if we're doing this. And so it takes that, agenda out of the equation. Networking is just making friends.
Yeah.
Right? And I don't think enough people think about it that way. I know I don't, not when I walk into a situation like that.
That's a really good point. And, you mentioned the handing out business cards thing earlier. My goal whenever I go to an event is not really even to pass out the business cards. Like, I've got them in my jacket pocket or in my wallet. But what I really want to do is form a connection so that maybe the next time I see you, whether it be out at another networking event or something like that, I'm a face that you recognize, and we can connect on a deeper level than we did even at that first interaction.
Yep.
And so my goal isn't to have you give me a call. I really probably am not going to give you a call. I've got stacks upon stacks of business cards from thousands of people, most who probably aren't even in our area anymore
Yeah.
because we're so transient.
Yeah.
And it's just not of any use to me. You know, having any type of online presence whatsoever, like you're going to be able to find who you want to find.
Yeah.
And so my idea is that rather than giving you a business card, giving you a 60-second elevator pitch on who I am and why I'm so cool, I want to connect with you.
Yeah.
And then maybe down the road we can do business.
Yeah.
I don't think the battle's won or lost in that first interaction. More often than not, it's
No, of course not.
right.
And it's so interesting to me, like, and that's where I think the pressure comes from me sometimes too.
I agree.
Is that like it is? I just recently picked up. It's not even a contract. This is so funny to me the way that this worked, right? Like I Facebook messaged someone who I'd had multiple meetings with, never landed a contract, right? Facebook messaged someone asking if they needed help with something because no agenda, right? This is very interesting to me, the way that my brain worked at the moment. There was no agenda in doing so. I was just like, man, this needs to get fixed. Right? It was a website issue. Right. It's like, man, this needs to get fixed. And I really it'd be really cool if we could get this fixed because I knew they were doing good things. Facebook messaged, hey, da-da-da-da-da. Do you want me to help? Like, this is broken. Do you want me to, I don't mind building you guys a website out for us. And it was, can we meet tomorrow? Right? Didn't know what was going to happen, had no idea how that was going to play out, right? But it very well could turn into just understanding that circle of people very well could turn into something very big for us.
Oh, yeah.
But I think I wish more people would think about it that way. And I think do you have a LinkedIn?
I do.
I hate LinkedIn, and let me tell you why. I get at least 3 or 4 messages every single day from someone trying to sell me something through LinkedIn Messenger, right? And I know what they're doing, right? They're copying and pasting this message and sending it to every single one of their contacts. Yeah. Right? Do you ever get any of these?
Oh, yeah.
Maybe I'm just friends with weird people.
No. Today I got a message about millennial professionals, and it's apparently, that's not the name, but it's some nationwide organization that wants to be kind of an online-based networking organization for millennials. Yeah. Very vague thing. They wanted to connect. I accepted the connection invite, but immediately I got the message asking if I would be interested in more info about this project. Another one that I got today was because of my experience with the broadcast TV industry. Even though I wasn't on the TV side, they wanted to pay me to talk about my time in the industry, and that was probably a pitch in and of itself. Sure. I highly doubt that they were looking to just pay me for my opinion on something. Yeah. But yeah, those are 2 today. Yeah. Through LinkedIn, LinkedIn definitely has a place, and whenever I'm doing my digital advertising, like for certain clientele, it's a fantastic platform to implement.
Of course.
Personally,
but not in that way, and this is the point I was trying to make, right? Yeah. So like it's the same. I look at all of these things the same way, right? And there's some people that are probably going to like, this guy doesn't know what the hell he's talking about. I hate cold calling. I hate cold emails. I think cold LinkedIn messages are also dumb. I just don't. It seems like a drastic waste of my time. Yep. And not because I don't think it could lead to something, right? Like, not that I don't think calling 3,000 people a month is going to lead to something. Of course it will, right? Like, if you hit something hard enough for long enough, something's going to hit. But it just seems like there's so many more efficient ways to get a business KPI done, right? And I love the way you talk about the networking thing, because it's literally how business works in the real world, right? It is not. Most people do not get $1 million contracts because they cold called somebody. Right? They get those contracts because they've known that person for years and years and years, and they trust them, and they've seen their work, and they've been involved with them in some way, shape, or form, and that's how those people get those contracts. Anyway, I don't want this to turn into, like, I didn't intend this to turn into a business podcast at all. It's just because we're in the similar industries.
While we're on that note, though, I just want to mention, whenever I first got into networking, I was really, and I say got into networking like it's a hobby. It's not. Like, I go to things I want to go to, But when I was in banking, I was encouraged. It was actually a requirement of the role that I was in to be involved in I needed to be on the board of a nonprofit, and I also needed to be in some type of community networking organization.
Huh.
And it was actually I was asked to track the time that I spent out in the community, and report back to my superiors on that.
Mm-hmm.
And I was resentful of it at first. And whenever I first started doing it, I had the bottom line in mind. I was like, where can I go to these events that I'm going to land contracts, get people in for the bank, and,
Yep.
and so on. And whenever I formed a relationship, but I was still myself, I'm very relationship first kind of person. And I would get frustrated if I formed a relationship that was either very one-sided, where I felt like I was helping somebody out a lot and they weren't giving anything back, or if I formed a relationship with somebody that I didn't really care too much about, but I was interested in landing their business.
Yep.
And
I think you have to go.
Oh,
I think that was someone who just walked up.
probably.
Super, just being transparent. He's got a meeting to go to. We're going to cut this break.
Yep.
Ryan McGuire, Armic Systems.
Armic Systems.
Facebook, Instagram. What can they find you?
Yeah, you can catch me on Facebook at Armic Systems. I don't keep it updated very often, which is awesome for a guy in digital advertising to say. Yeah.
Cool.
That's where you can catch me.
Sounds good.
ArmicSystems.com.